14 wheels. Count them, 14, and every single one of them looks like it was designed to crush something. What you are looking at right now is one of the most visually aggressive motorhome concepts I have ever sat down to analyze, and I need you to stay with me through this whole video because the further we go, the more interesting this gets. Now, full transparency before we dive in, this is an AI-generated fictional concept. No factory, no manufacturer, no price tag, no delivery date. It exists in imagination and render form only. You cannot buy it, order it, or park it in your driveway. What you can do, and what I think makes this worth a serious breakdown, is look at the design logic embedded in every facet of this thing. Because whoever built this concept was not thinking about campgrounds. They were thinking about dominance. We are calling it the Titan Noir. Here is how this video goes. We are walking the full exterior, every angle, every panel, every glowing accent. Then we are going inside, and even though no interior render exists, I am going to walk you through exactly what I believe is happening in that habitable space based on the exterior proportions. After that, powertrain logic, because a vehicle this size needs something extraordinary under the floor. And then my verdict, where I will tell you the one detail on this concept that I genuinely think is ahead of its time. Stay with me, because that rear roof structure, we will get there, and when we do, you are going to see this vehicle completely differently. Let us start at the front, because this is where the concept announces its entire personality in one single glance. The front face of the Titan Noir is angular, aggressively, deliberately, unapologetically angular. We are talking faceted panels that stack on top of each other like armor plates. And that's not accidental language, because that is clearly the design reference. This thing draws from military hardware. Think Oshkosh Defense, think MRAP, think the aesthetic language of vehicles built to go anywhere on Earth, regardless of what that Earth looks like. The DRL signature, those bright white and ice blue horizontal slash lines cutting across the upper third of the front fascia, do something really smart. They visually widen the front end. This vehicle is already enormous, but those light signatures make it feel even broader, even more planted, even more like something that does not move for anything. Below that, you have a stacked lighting cluster. High beams, auxiliary floods, lower running accents, all integrated into the armor geometry rather than bolted on as afterthoughts. In a real-world engineering scenario, those lower auxiliary lights would be critical for off-road use, throwing light low and wide across uneven terrain at night. But aesthetically, they read as pure threat, pure intent. That front bumper, it's massive. Integrated approach angle geometry, what appears to be a central tow and recovery point, and recessed fog lamp housings tucked into each corner. This front end says nothing in front of me has the right of way. Step back and look at the full side of this thing. The habitable section, the living box that sits above the chassis and running gear, reads as a near-perfect rectangle in matte black, with one important exception: those windows. The glazing runs in a long, continuous band along the midsection, and in this render, you can actually see warm, amber interior light bleeding through them. That tells us something crucial. The interior is lit, warm, inhabited, designed for human comfort. And that contrast, dark, armored exterior, warm, glowing interior, is one of the most compelling visual tensions I've seen in a concept like this. Outside, it's intimidating. Inside, it's a home. That duality is not easy to achieve in design. The roof line is where things get genuinely interesting. There's a secondary structure up there. Angular, fin-like protrusions rising from the roofline, and what appears to be a full-width equipment rail or mounting platform across the top. We'll come back to that in detail, but from the profile, what it does is add visual height and drama without making the vehicle look top-heavy. That's hard to do. The lower body, the transition zone between chassis and habitable section, uses flared angular cladding that echoes the front fascia geometry. Everything belongs to the same design language. There's internal consistency here, from bumper to tail. Let's talk about those 10 wheels, because this is the element that, more than anything else, tells you what this concept was built to do. We're looking at what appears to be a triple-axle configuration in the rear, plus a dual-axle setup forward. All 10 wheels are wearing massive all-terrain tires. Wide sidewall, aggressive tread pattern, the kind of rubber you see on heavy expedition vehicles and serious off-road builds. The rims are multi-spoke in a dark finish with what looks like blue accent lighting integrated into the inner barrel. Now, why does the wheel count matter to you as someone who would actually use this vehicle? Because 10 wheels distributed across that much chassis length means load distribution. It means you're spreading the weight of an enormous habitable structure across more contact patches, which translates to better traction on loose terrain, better stability on inclines, and less chance of getting catastrophically stuck when the road disappears. Because with this concept, the road disappearing is clearly part of the plan. The stance is wide, planted. There is no visual fragility anywhere in this lower section. This is a vehicle that communicates permanence. Okay, I said I would come back to the roof, and here we are. Look at the top of this vehicle. There are angular fin or blade structures rising from the roof, symmetrically placed, forward swept, almost like the dorsal architecture you would see on a stealth aircraft. And across the full width of the upper deck, there is a mounting rail system carrying what appears to be a combination of equipment pods, possibly lighting bars, and surface panels that in a real-world build scenario would almost certainly be where your solar array lives. But here is what I find genuinely forward-thinking about this design decision. Those blade structures are not just aesthetic. They create a channel effect along the roofline. And if you're thinking aerodynamically, which the designer clearly was, at least partially, those vertical structures could serve as flow guides, managing the way air moves over the flat upper surface of the habitable box. On a vehicle this tall and this wide, aerodynamic management at the roofline is a real engineering challenge. Anything that helps reduce the lift and drag across that upper surface has meaningful real-world implications for stability at highway speed. Whether the designer intended this or not, the visual logic holds up, and that is what good concept design does. It looks right and it works right, even in imagination. The exterior alone makes the Titan Noir one of the most visually compelling motorhome concepts I have analyzed. But honestly, the exterior is the easy part, the exciting part, and the part I've been looking forward to since I first saw this render is what I think is going on inside that armored shell. Now, no interior render was provided for this concept, so what I'm about to do is what I love doing, detective work. We are going to read this exterior like a blueprint and reconstruct what almost certainly has to be happening inside. And I think what we find is going to surprise you. Based on the exterior proportions, and we're making educated estimates here based on the visible wheel diameter and chassis height as reference points, the habitable section of the Titan Noir appears to be approximately 9 to 10 meters in length, somewhere between 2.5 and 3 meters wide, and if that roofline is where I think it is, we're looking at interior ceiling heights approaching 2.1 to 2.2 meters. That's stand-up height, full stand-up height. In a vehicle this size, that's the difference between feeling like you are living somewhere and feeling like you are folded into a tin can. That ceiling height, if my estimate is right, changes the entire quality of the experience. That long, continuous window band we saw on the exterior, that's your primary natural light source for the main living and dining area. Based on its positioning, roughly mid-height on the habitable section, I would place the main living and dining area along the passenger side, flooded with daylight from that glass band. Imagine what that actually means. You are parked somewhere extraordinary, a mountain pass, a desert plateau, a coastal cliff, and your living room window is running the length of your usable interior space. That is not an RV experience. That is a boutique hotel suite that drove itself to the edge of the world. The warm amber interior glow visible in the render tells me the lighting design skews warm and intentional, not the cold fluorescent utility lighting of a conventional motorhome. Warm, layered, atmospheric, the kind of light that makes a space feel curated. In a habitable section this long, I would expect the sleeping quarters to occupy the rear third of the interior, probably separated from the living area by either a sliding partition or a dedicated bulkhead. Given the width of this vehicle, a transverse bed configuration is almost certainly possible, meaning the bed runs side to side rather than front to back. On a vehicle this wide, that could realistically accommodate a proper king-size sleeping surface, not a converted dinette, not a fold-out shelf, an actual bed. The rear upper structure, those fin elements and the roof-mounted hardware we discussed outside, would contribute to an elevated ceiling profile in this rear zone, so you would have this sense of overhead volume above the sleeping area. Combined with rear privacy, that's a genuinely hotel-grade sleeping environment.
Compact but serious. Given the width and the overall proportions, I would expect the kitchen to occupy a galley-style section roughly in the mid to forward interior zone, probably driver side to balance the layout. In a concept built with this level of design intent, the kitchen integration would be tight and deliberate. Induction cooking rather than gas, because induction is cleaner, safer in an enclosed space, and consistent with the electric or hybrid powertrain logic this vehicle would require. Refrigeration, integrated waste management, and likely a water system designed around a large freshwater tank, because a vehicle this large built for remote operation would need serious water independence. This is where the Titan Noir gets interesting from a driver experience perspective. The front cab section, based on the exterior, is a raised forward offset cockpit. That angled, layered front fascia tells me the driver sits high, potentially with a panoramic windscreen offering excellent forward visibility despite the aggressive front geometry. In a concept with this level of technological ambition, the cockpit would logically incorporate a full digital instrument cluster, large format navigation and terrain management displays, and camera feeds replacing conventional mirrors, particularly useful on a vehicle this wide, where traditional mirrors would either be enormous or inadequate. And here is where I think this concept really earns its fictional future and autonomous highway mode. A vehicle built with this kind of integrated technology platform, 10-wheel chassis, self-leveling suspension, and energy management systems is a natural candidate for Level 3 or Level 4 highway autonomy, the kind where you engage the system, walk back to the living area, and arrive at your destination having lived in your home the entire time. That is not science fiction. The technology building blocks exist. They just need assembly, and concepts like this are where that assembly gets imagined. Let us talk about what would actually power something like this, because this is a concept we get to think freely, but I want to keep it grounded. A vehicle this heavy, and we're talking about a structure that almost certainly exceeds 15 to 18,000 kilograms fully loaded, cannot be efficiently moved by a conventional petrol or diesel drivetrain without enormous fuel consumption and corresponding range limitations. The logical choice for the Titan Noir in a near-future scenario is a series hybrid or fully electric platform. Series hybrid would mean a high-output generator, potentially hydrogen-fueled, producing electricity that drives individual electric motors at each axle. The 10-wheel configuration actually makes this setup particularly elegant because you can distribute torque precisely across all 5 axles, giving you extraordinary traction control without a mechanical differential nightmare. A full battery electric option would require an enormous pack. We're talking somewhere in the 400 to 600 kilowatt-hour range to achieve meaningful range at highway speed. That technology exists in prototype and early production form today, primarily in heavy commercial vehicles. In a 5 to 10-year horizon, it becomes more viable. In a 2040 scenario, it is entirely plausible. That roof platform we discussed on the exterior is not just a visual statement. In a real-world build, that surface would be covered in high-efficiency monocrystalline solar panels. On a roof footprint this large, you could realistically generate 5 to 8 kilowatts of peak solar input. That doesn't power the main drive motors directly, the numbers don't scale that way, but it does meaningful work managing hotel loads, climate control, lighting, appliances, water heating, electronics. Off-grid, that solar contribution could realistically extend your self-sufficient parked operation by days. That is genuine off-grid luxury, and that's the promise the Titan Noir is making visually with every square meter of that roof platform.
All right, let me give you my honest read on the Titan Noir. What it gets right. Design language. Full stop. This concept has an internal design grammar that runs from the front bumper to the rear tail. Angular, aggressive, consistent, and undeniably dramatic. Most concepts fall apart on close inspection because details were not thought through. This one holds up. The lighting integration is sophisticated, the wheel treatment is intentional, the roofline architecture is bold but logical. The dual-natured tension, armored exterior, warm, inhabited interior, is genuinely clever. It says something about the intended user, someone who wants total capability and total comfort without apologizing for either. What raises questions? Practicality at road level. A vehicle this wide and this tall faces real-world limitations on standard roads. Bridge clearances, lane widths, parking infrastructure, none of it was designed with the Titan Noir in mind. In a real production scenario, that engineering problem would require either significant size reduction or a very specific use case profile, dedicated off-road operation, private estate access, or government and expedition fleet usage. The 10-wheel system is visually spectacular. Whether the mechanical complexity of 5-axle torque management in real terrain justifies the engineering cost over a more conventional 6x6 setup, that is a genuine question. Complexity costs money and creates failure points. The detail I find most impressive: the roof blade architecture. Those forward-swept fin structures rising from the roofline serve as both visual signature and functional suggestion. No other motorhome concept I can recall has treated the roof as a primary design statement rather than a flat surface to mount things on. That thinking, treating the roof as architecture rather than real estate, is genuinely progressive, and I would love to see it influence real production thinking. What I would change? I would soften one thing, just one: the transition between the armored lower body and the habitable upper section is currently an abrupt geometric shift. A more developed design language in that transition zone, something that bridges the military chassis energy with the residential upper section, would make this concept feel more resolved. Right now, those two worlds meet rather than flow into each other. The Titan Noir is a fictional concept. It is AI generated. It will never be built exactly as you have seen it today, and honestly, that is fine. That is not the point. The point is what it makes you think about. It makes you think about what luxury mobility could look like if the designer had zero constraints and total freedom. And that is a useful thing to imagine, because the best production vehicles of the next decade are going to be shaped by exactly this kind of imaginative pressure. Someone, somewhere, is going to look at concepts like this and say, not all of it, but some of it. That part. Let us build that. It is still one of the most visually powerful mobile living concepts I have broken down on this channel. Here is my question for you. Would you take the Titan Noir off-road into genuinely remote territory, or would you want something like this strictly on paved roads for the visual impact? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. If this kind of deep dive concept analysis is why you come to YouTube, the design thinking, the engineering logic, the imagination of what could exist, there's a lot more of it on this channel. Hitting subscribe is the easiest way to make sure the next one finds you.